Star Wars because I like the whole future aspect of it, and the lightsabers are really cool.
Sound of Freedom. If you haven't seen it, go check it out.
I love the superheroes type movies. They're great.
What's one of your favorite movies?
Aladdin. I like Bamboo. Jurassic World. Sonic.
One of your favorite movies?
Jumanji.
Probably Jumanji.
What's one of your favorite movies?
The Matrix. Fist of Fury.
Star Wars. I like Ariel and Beauty and the Beast. I like Spider-Man.
One of my favorite movies is Interstellar.
Your favorite movies?
One of my favorite movies of all time, The Dark Knight.
Elsa and Anna. Elsa?
Elsa, Frozen. Do you like Frozen?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. Well, here we are in week 2 of our series, God at the Movies, and we just saw a couple people sharing what their favorite movies are. And what's one of your favorite movies? I know a couple of mine were in the clips. Some people mentioned about Star Wars. I love the whole Star Wars franchise. They mentioned The Matrix. I remember that first came out. Man, that was such a good movie. Like, take the red pill or the blue pill. I love that one. That was so good. And, back when I was like in school, we watched a bunch of dumb movies. Those are all my favorite ones, like Wayne's World. I got my Wayne's World t-shirt on today. Or like UHF or Monty Python stuff. We used to watch all those dumb things, but they were so funny and we loved them. And when it comes to our favorite movies, we might like maybe different movies or different genres. You might like comedy more, or you might like action more, or maybe like drama or romance or documentaries or historical films, whatever it might be. We all like different types of movies, but it doesn't matter what type it is. We got to have a good story in order to have a good movie that we really enjoy. And I think we really like these movies because of their stories, and we connect with these stories, and I think that's because it begins to paint a picture of a bigger story, of God's story. In this series, God at the Movies, we're looking at these different movies that we connect with their stories, and we're seeing how they give us a glimpse into God's story. And we're looking at God's story and how his story is really our story, because he wants to be connected to each one of us. He wants each one of us to be part of his story. And what we're seeing is that he can actually rewrite the story of our lives, flip the script of our lives, so that we can experience a great story as well and be part of his story. So last week we kicked off the series, looked at Encanto. Today we're having a double feature. We're looking at 2 different movies that actually kind of bring us to the same storyline. And so it's a double feature. And these are a couple movies that I've seen over the past few years. The first one is Free Guy. Have you seen this one? Free Guy stars Ryan Reynolds, and it's typical Ryan Reynolds in the way he talks and acts and his sarcasm and things like that. And so it's a highly entertaining film, and it all revolves around him as this video game character. He plays in the movie this guy known as Guy. That's his name, Guy. And he later becomes known as Blue Shirt Guy, a big step up, right? Well, he is just like a background character in this video game. And this video game is called Free City. And it's like a typical like Grand Theft Auto type video game that you might see nowadays. And there's lots of guns and shootings and punching and fighting, and you go around to try to get your health and your money and all those type of things. And so he is just the bank teller in this video game. But what we see is that his code begins to shift, and he wants something more. He sees the girl of his dreams, and he ends up stealing the sunglasses of one of the main characters. The main characters were the players who were actually there. And as he takes their glasses, all of them had glasses, he puts them on, and he begins to see all of the icons, like the health icons and the money icons and all the weapons and all the signage and all those things like that. And it changes his whole world. What we see in the movie is that he was this background character, and then he ends up becoming this viral star, and people are following him. He actually changed the way people think about the game, and it's this really story of finding freedom and love, and there's a couple things that he says in this game. He's trying to talk his other background players, his friends, especially his best friend, into taking a step out of their regular routine. He says this in the movie. There's a couple quotes he says. He says, life doesn't have to be something that just happens to us. And he says, we don't have to be the spectators of our own lives. And later he says, I'm not stuck in the loop anymore. See, he was stuck in this loop. The code written for him was this code that every day he would wake up and do the same thing. He'd go to the coffee shop and he would get a coffee with cream and 2 sugars. And then he would go to the bank and he'd work at the bank and someone would come rob the bank. And then he would just do these same things all over again and again and again. And he was just in the background, kind of unnoticed, stuck in the loop. But he's like, we don't have to be spectators of our own lives. And he said, life doesn't have to be something that just happens. And so he steps out and his code begins to shift. And he chases the girl of his dreams and it changes everything for him. You know, while this is just a video game and obviously just a movie, I think there's some things that kind of can hit home with us at times. And really the question is what's been the code or the pattern of your life? Do you feel like you're like a spectator of your own life? Do you feel like you're kind of just stuck in the loop? Do you feel like you're chasing after all these things, but life just happens to you? You never quite get a hold of what you're trying to find in life? What's the pattern of your life? What's the code of your life? It says here in Romans chapter 12, we're going to be looking at it in a couple different ways this morning. But Romans chapter 12 begins with these verses, and it says this, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. See, God has this good, pleasing, and perfect will for you, for me. He's the designer, the creator of life. And as he designed life, he has this way of living where it's good and pleasing and perfect for you. And he says, if we're going to find that, we can't follow the pattern of this world. What pattern are you living in? Are you living in God's pattern, or are you chasing after something else? See, we can find ourselves in this spot where the code of our life that we've written, where the pattern of our life that we're walking in is just doing what everybody else is doing. We're chasing after all the same things. We're like, I need to have all my kids in these activities. I just need to keep working all this time, and I need to try to get the boat or the house or the phone or the car or whatever it is that our friends at school have or the people around us have or the people on Instagram have. If I just have all those things, then my life will be complete, and that's the pattern we can set our life up to. I need to be in these activities, or I need to have these things, and then my life will be complete. But this is not what we see here in Romans 12. Romans 12 says, don't conform to the pattern of this world. He's saying that God has this good, pleasing, and perfect way that he designed life. And if we're willing to take the steps to offer ourselves to him, we can discover it. He can transform our life. Are you feeling stuck, or you're just going through the grind, or you're just working for the weekends and the weekends go by too quick? Are you feeling like you're trying to find something and you just can't quite get a hold of it? What's the pattern of your life? I want you to start thinking about that, because we're at time for the double feature. The next movie I want to talk about is this movie called Onward. It was a Disney Pixar movie. It came out right as the pandemic and started and everything was shutting down back in 2020. And I think it's kind of an underrated Disney Pixar film. I think it's one of their better ones. And I think it was kind of missed because of the whole pandemic thing. I don't know if you saw it. It was like in theaters, and then all of a sudden the theaters all shut down. So it was later released on Disney Plus. But Onward is this movie about these two brothers, Ian and Barley, and they're elves, and they live in this kind of mythical world with all these other people. All the people in this world are like kind of medieval type, mythical type characters. You have like dragons and centaurs and elves and unicorns and things like that. But they don't function in life like the way we would think of. When you think of those things, we wouldn't think of how the movie starts. And it begins with them living in what would be like a modern day city today, and they all have cell phones and cars, and they're not living in the way that we would expect them to live. In fact, the movie opens with this line. It talks about how they were once lived in this magical world, but people pursued a simpler way to live. And so we have Ian and Barley, and they're in this world, and Barley's kind of this outcast. He's graduated from high school, but he's kind of out there dreaming of different things. And then we have Ian, and he's trying to really find himself. The movie begins with him turning 16 years old, and he's really struggling to figure out who he is. And part of the reason why is because we see they live with just their mom. True Disney fashion, the dad had died at some point. I don't know why Disney is always like killing off the parents in these movies, but we see his dad has passed and they live with their mom. And so Ian's trying to figure out like who his dad was and really who he is and who he's becoming as he's becoming an adult and heading towards adulthood. And so it begins with his birthday, and for his birthday, his mom gives him this gift from their dad. She said before your dad got sick, he put this all together, and he wanted you guys to have it, and when you're both of this age. And so she passes on the staff, and with this staff comes this letter, and the letter says this. The letter says, "Dear Ian and Barley, long ago the world was full of wonder. It was adventurous and exciting, and best of all, there was magic. And all that magic helped all in need. But it wasn't easy to master, and so the world found a simpler way to get by, and over time magic faded away. But I hope there's a little magic left in you." And so they have this staff, and it comes with this letter, but also a spell to bring their dad back for one day. And they cast this spell, and as their dad's coming back, you see like his feet and his legs and his waist, and then all of a sudden the crystal in the staff blows up, and they were left with just kind of half of their dad. And so they have to try to find this other crystal to bring their dad back, and they kind of put this false body together for their dad, and it's a little bit like Weekend at Bernie's type, if you remember that movie back in the day. But then they begin on this whole adventure, and it begins to change everything for them. They discover kind of who they are. They discover new love for their family members, new acceptance of who they are, and they begin to live this life full of excitement and adventure. You know, the movie, that letter from their dad, the movie actually opens with those same thing and actually closes with it very similar from that letter. Life was once adventurous and exciting, but then people went for a simpler way, and the magic faded away. You know, they were supposed to be these centaurs and elves and unicorns and dragons and things like that, but they were just missing out on who they truly were because they were just living in this other code and this other pattern. And in this movie, we see that they pursue this way, they go on this quest and this adventure, and it brings excitement and adventure and fulfillment back to their life. And I see the same idea that we saw in Free Guy. The question is what pattern are you living in? And like they were living in this pattern that was simpler, but they lost the magic. They weren't living who they were designed to be. There was no foundation for their life, and so they kind of felt lost. Again, what's the pattern of your life? And so what I want to talk about is if we find ourselves stuck, or if we just want to keep taking steps to experience God's good, pleasing, and perfect will for our lives, the way He designed life to live, like how do we do that? Well, we're going to look at the rest of Romans 12 because I think it will show us a way where we can rewrite the code, we can change the pattern, we can move from just trying to do the simpler way of life into this life full of adventure and excitement, a life where we experience God's good, pleasing, and perfect will. If you look at it, begins with really, what are we going to do with our lives? And the next verse in Romans chapter 12, Romans chapter 3, it says that begins with, like, don't thinking of yourself too highly. Like, life isn't all about you. And it really is this idea, the pattern idea is, if I'm willing to give my life away to God, to offer myself to Him as a living sacrifice, and then in view of His mercy for me, to extend His love and grace to others, not thinking of myself too highly. If I live thinking He's the one I should be making high, and I'm going to take a step down, and then I'm going to give my life away. When we live like that, that's when we begin to experience the transformation, a new pattern that can really shift our lives. Last week, Paul talked about the next couple of verses, 4 through 8, and how in Encanto, it was the movie we featured last week, we all have a gift. That's what we see in Encanto, and that gift is for the betterment of the community in that movie. But in the Bible, what we see is, as if we're part of the church, is in part of a relationship with God and part of His family, we're all given a gift as well. And that gift is designed for the betterment of other people. It's designed to build each other up and to glorify God through all of that. So when we begin to take steps to do that, to use the gifts that God has given for His glory and to help other people, then we begin to experience this new pattern. And it continues in verse 9. It says this: love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited, and don't repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And if it's possible, if it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends. Leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, "It is mine to avenge. I will repay," says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you'll heap burning coals on their head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. You know, as you read through those verses there, you see a whole new pattern, right? A much different pattern than what we see around us. When it says, don't conform to the pattern of the world, we see a much different pattern here, right? And maybe some of them stuck out to you, but there's this idea of as it begins, hate what is evil and cling to what is good. Like, this is the beginning of this pattern. Like think of your own life. Like, what are you clinging to? Are you trying to chase after these things and grabbing at things that just leave you feeling empty? This is saying, are you holding on to some old ways of living that are against God's ways that you need to push aside and pursue Him? Cling to what is good. And it talks about like how we treat other people. It talks about like practicing hospitality, associating with people that you might think are below you. Like, don't be conceited in that way. It talked about giving to those who are in need, serving people who are in need. It talked about blessing those who persecute you. Like, and one of these things it said, like, don't repay evil for evil. Like I hear people say this sometimes, like I'll be the nicest person to you unless you do me wrong, and then you're in trouble. Well, that's not what we see here. This says that don't repay evil for evil. Even bless those who persecute, or even your enemies. Like, don't look for revenge. Like give them food, or if they're hungry, or something to drink if they're thirsty. And it says, do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. That's a whole new pattern, isn't it? Like, if you think of the pattern of this world, like you turn on the news and all you see is like this one side hates the other side, and there's just so much other hate going on, and all this conflict. And here it's saying, like, don't hang on to that. Don't hang on to hate. Let's overcome evil with good. Let's look to do good. Let's not hang on to hate. Let's not speak hate. Let's not be mean. Let's not be conceited. It's saying overcome evil with good. That's a whole different pattern of living, isn't it? As we read through those things, was there one maybe that stuck out to you? Maybe there was one thing you're like, ooh, that is a pattern in my life. I need to make that shift. And maybe you're like, or maybe it's even been, I've tried to make that shift before. And how do I do it? Well, it really begins at the beginning of the chapter. If you're thinking of that list, you're like, those things are all really hard. Yeah, they are. Those are hard things to do. But what it begins with, in view of God's mercy, it's knowing that God has loved us unconditionally and gave up his life for us, even though we didn't deserve it. In view of that, it's saying offer ourselves to God. In view of God's mercy, know that we don't deserve it. We're going to offer ourselves to God, but also in that view of that same mercy, we're going to extend that mercy to other people. See, as we look to take these steps and create a new pattern in our life, to experience God's good, pleasing, and perfect will, as we take those steps, they're not going to be easy to take. In fact, in some ways, they're almost impossible unless we allow God to work in us and through us. See, if we're going to be transformed, it's really about God's love and mercy and grace filling our lives, and in view of that mercy, flowing through our lives and sharing that with others. We need to allow God to transform us. That's why it says, offer your body as a living sacrifice. Offer yourselves to him, saying, God, you have been so gracious and loving towards me. I offer myself to you. Transform my life. Renew my mind, the way I see things, the way I think about things. And then we can begin to shift these patterns in our life. It's a whole different way of living, right? The interesting thing is, you think of these movies we're saying, in the Free Guy movie, the movie was created for destruction, shooting and guns and fighting and punching and all these things. And Blue Shirt Guy changes everything. He decides that he doesn't want to shoot people or do things like that. And so he goes around and in order to level up, he steals guns, he stops murders, he stops fighting, he stops the shootings and things like that. And that's how he levels up in the game. And then he begins to go viral. And then people begin to talk about how it's causing them to think about how they see other people in the game and how they even play the game. And it begins to shift how they even think. All because Blue Shirt Guy decided to not be about what the game was designed to be, but to create a new pattern, a new code. I think the same is true of our lives. As we begin to look at our life differently, to renew our mind because God's transforming our lives, and as we begin to shift the pattern of how we live, it can not only change our life, but be an inspiration to other people around us. Say, like, I want something more. And we can show them that through our actions, through our words, through how we live. But as it says here, love must be sincere. We got to take these steps to allow God's love to fill us and to flow through us to create a new pattern in our life. That's why it's so important, like we talked about last week, to be part of the church body, because we need these reminders. We need the encouragement. We need to spur each other on. We need to be devoted to one another in love, as we read today, because we can't do it by ourselves. We need God. We need other people. We need to encourage each other and create these new patterns in our life. So as we think back to those verses there, what's been the pattern of your life? Maybe as you read through those, one stuck out. Maybe today you're like, I need to work on shifting that pattern in my life. It's not going to be done by willpower. It's not going to be done because we just think about it today. It's going to be done because we're going to offer ourselves to God. We're going to allow him to transform our life. We're going to allow him to work in our life. The thing is, we have to let him be that influence. You know, like my mom would always talk about like this quote: "If everyone jumped off a bridge, would you do it too?" Just because everyone's jumping off a bridge doesn't mean you should do it. Like, did your parents ever say something like that to you? The whole idea is like, let's not follow the crowd. We have all these influences around our life, what we see on TV, what we see online, on social media, maybe friends that we associate with. And if we allow them to create the patterns of our life, we're going to end up stuck in that loop. We're going to end up in this pattern, in this code, that just leaves us empty. We have to let God's influence grow in our life. He's the one that can transform us. If we want to transform our lives by the renewing of our mind, to know His good, pleasing, and perfect will, we have to increase the influence of Him in our lives. And we do that in two ways: open ourselves up to Him, offering ourselves to Him, being part of this church so we can hear more about Him, so we can be encouraged in that, so we can encourage each other. But then also, when we live it out, it grows that influence. It's twofold. We got to do both of those things: offer ourselves to Him and give our lives away to others. It's twofold. And when we do that, then I think we'll experience a life of adventure and excitement, as we, like that story we might connect to in Onward. We might shift the whole pattern and code of our life like we see in the Free Guy. But most importantly, as we see in Romans, the story of our life can be one where we know God's good, pleasing, and perfect will, where we experience His love in our life that's sincere and that can transform our lives. Don't follow the crowd. Don't keep walking in those same patterns. Let's not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good, because we decide to not conform anymore to those patterns of this world, but we're allowing God to transform our lives. What's one of those patterns you saw in there that you need to begin to shift in your life? I want you to think about that. Maybe even write that down. Let's pray about that right now. God, you know everything about us. You know the good and the bad. And as we are thinking about the patterns of our life, we want to experience a new way of living where we're transformed by your love and your grace and your mercy. So as we think about these patterns in our life that we need to shift, we need you to work in us and through us. As we see opportunities, give us the boldness to take steps to hate what is evil and to cling on to what is good. Give us the strength to not repay evil for evil, not to be overcome by evil, but to overcome evil with good in our lives. Give us the strength and encouragement to when we see those opportunities, to take them, to experience you transforming our life and working in and through our lives, to break those old patterns, to not conform anymore, but to experience you in our life and the way you design it to be lived. We look to you in your name, we pray. Amen.